Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to this second review now in our Stargrave review series. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Stargrave Scavengers box produced by Northstar. And as with all of these Stargrave reviews, this one is sponsored by Northstar as they were kind enough to send this to us to take a look at together. So once again, I'd like to extend sincere thanks to them for facilitating this video so that we could review these together. And I've said in the other video, the automatons that we took a look at that were just released last month, that I really dig the Stargrave aesthetic, and I'll probably keep repeating, but in brief, it's just that the art, the design, the style really reminds me of like 80s and 90s art, video games, I guess toward the 90s side of it, TV shows, movies, where things were a little less polished looking. It looks I keep using the term gritty. I'm really not sure how to convey what I mean when I say it's a little more rough around the edges, and I find that very charming. And the Scavengers box, like I mentioned, the automatons in that review were just released last month. The Scavengers were released in the summer of 2024. So this is about a 1-year-old kit, but it still represents one of their more recent sets. We're kind of working backwards in time here as we do these reviews. And with all of their Stargrave sets, they come with 20 miniatures. They do come with bases. That's something to note. And they're true multi-part figures, as is alluded to down here. If you're used to playing a lot of 40K, a lot of Citadel games, these by contrast are going to be like real multi-part plastics, which we'll take a look at here in a moment. So as with all of my reviews, I've already taken everything out of the box. And once you get it for yourself, what you're going to be greeted with are 2 sprues of these flat 25mm round bases, which are very handy to have. Of course, you could source your own bases if you wanted to use any of those like post-slotted bases. And then you're going to have 4 identical sprues of 5 miniatures apiece. Again, 20 miniatures per box. So what we're going to do is isolate one of these, and we'll take a look at it up close here. If you're not familiar with my reviews, once again, welcome. What we're going to do here is we'll look at the sprue contents up close. I'll give you breakdowns on this kind of tsunami of bits that we're looking at. We're going to assemble a bunch of these figures. I'm going to do some kit bashing with some other miniatures in my collection. We'll do some scale comparisons with other manufacturers and miniatures, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So let's dive on in here. So I'll do a front and back shot of the sprue here. And if you saw the automatons review, then this one should be no surprise, because that one was just absolutely brimming with head and arm bits for kit bashing purposes, for customizability purposes. This one has a degree of that, but what it really pushes on is the accessories, the gear, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So I mentioned there are 5 bodies per sprue, again 20 per box. So all the numbers that I rattle off, I sometimes hop back and forth, but generally I'm talking about per sprue. So just keep that in mind when I talk about there being X number of heads, that's per sprue. So 5 bodies, and I'll tell you straight away, again, I love their design aesthetic. It gives me Dune vibes, it gives me Cultist vibes if you're a 40K player, kind of Mechanicus vibes too. I could see some solid conversions being based on these figures. Or for RPGs, games like Gamma World, any kind of dystopian, maybe like Fallout, that series. So yeah, these guys all have like trench coats, kind of robes. Good mix of design here. Again, these are scavengers, so they're supposed to represent people that are kind of cobbling together their uniforms and gear. So it looks fantastic. Everything's very crisp and clean from a sculpting standpoint. You can see there's plenty of detail here. These are going to be really fun to paint up. Let's talk heads. So there are 23 heads that are on the left and the right sides of the sprue, if you kind of hold it sideways here. I normally like to categorize heads, and in this case, the only thing I could think to do was to categorize them as alien heads or human heads. That's kind of what I've gone with here. So I'm just going to rotate around the sprue, and I'll tell you that there are 12 heads that I think are clearly alien heads, like this one here. And the other 11 heads are either human heads, like this guy here, or it could be either, like this guy here, where he's got a mask and a hood up. But there are certain heads that are definitely non-human heads. So again, there's going to be 12 of those, and there are 11 heads that are either human or could be either. And I love the mix of like respirators, masks. Some of them are wearing like hats or goggles. It really conveys the feeling of, yeah, just running around picking up scraps of bits and gear in order to put together your equipment. So they really look fantastic, and the detail's great. I'll give you a quick shot of the back here. Yeah, especially on things like the hair, the mechanical bits and bobs on things like the respirators. All looks great. So let's talk weapons. So all of the guns, I really like the design on these guns. They all have kind of like a mix of if we're talking about like real world firearms, kind of like a mix of a AK-47 and a Spaz shotgun. It's kind of the design they've gone with here for most of them. And so all of them are a little bit different too. You can see here, not even just like in terms of like the magazine type, but in terms of the sight, like the iron sights that are up top. It makes it feel like they had like similar gun chassis that they were kind of like assembling. They're making their own gear basically. So you can see like this one here has a single barrel. Some of them have like longer barrels underneath. Really fantastic stuff. So there are 8 that are these AK style rifles, is what I'll call them. Even this one here. And again, a mix of magazine types, sights. So I'm kind of cruising around here. Yeah, I think they all look really good. Like this one here has like some wrappings up on the front of it. Makes them all look really individual and unique. So 8 of those. You have 8 of those AK style rifles. And then you have 2 that are still that kind of pattern, but they have a drum magazine on them. Here and here. Which give even more shotgun vibes to me. You could even cut those off if you wanted to. But I think they look great as is. You have 2 that are heavier machine guns, so longer barrels and slightly larger magazines. But the same style of rifle. As you can see here, just bigger. So those look really cool. There are 3 pistols. They're all quite different looking actually. So they're all in the right hand. So there's this one here that's more of a revolver. And if I jump up here, there's this one up here. There's more of like a, I don't know, like a single shot shotgun maybe. And then there is one more that I keep struggling to find. And that one is down here. Which is more of a like small bolt pistol style. If I flip it over here, you can see what I'm talking about. So you got 3 of those pistols. Again, all of those are in the right hand. You've got 3 hand weapons to potentially accompany those. That are all in the left hand. So there's one with an axe. There's one down here with a mace or a club. And there's one here with a machete. Vaguely kukri style machete, but so there you go. Which gives me, again, talking about like dystopian film, like Book of Eli. That's what that gives me vibes of. So hey, everything looks really great from a sculpting standpoint. Some of their best weapon design, I think, that they've gone with. It seems like they really let the sculptors kind of run wild with it, and the results, I think, are really fantastic. And then we come to accessories, and I really struggled, again, to categorize these. So what I'm going to do is rotate around the sprue here and just kind of point out. It's a really neat mix of loose magazines, pouches, loose weapons like this one. There are 2 backpacks per sprue. So I like when they have kind of an open-ended design like this where it gives you the creative freedom to use this however you want. You could just like throw all of this stuff into like a crate or something to create a neat terrain piece. Of course, you could use this on your miniatures. But there are 23 individual accessory pieces like this scattered around each sprue, which again just gives you tons and tons of options to play with. Fantastic, obviously, from a kit bashing standpoint. We know with other Frostgrave sets that they work really well, but I even suspect like Wargames Atlantic stuff will scale up well. So on that note, let's do that now. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to assemble a bunch of these figures. I want to do some kit bashing with some of the other Stargrave sets that were sent to me, and as I just alluded to, maybe some Wargames Atlantic sci-fi stuff to see how everything scales up. Alright, so I've assembled a bunch of these figures. I did some kit bashes, but we'll start with the ones that I did straight out of the box. So that's these 5 here. And I used a mix of the alien heads, different kinds of firearms, different accessory bits. But I think they go together so well. It's very easy to find like just cool poses, pretty much for every set of arms or every head that I got. And that's another thing about multi-part plastic, is that you can create completely different poses just from angling the arms and the head in a slightly different way. But yeah, I think the detail here is all really great. And one tip, I know there were some comments on the automaton video about ball, like the head attachment point, head neck attachment point, not working all the time. And that's not a North Star phenomenon. That's just the nature of these ball mount heads. And one kind of like pro tip, if you can call it that, is that for any head that has like a ball joint socket, what I typically do is I take a little sliver of the head off. So again, if we're talking about a ball mount head like this one, sorry to get it blurry on you, just take a little sliver off of the bottom of the neck. And again, this isn't something I just do with North Star stuff. This is something that I do with any manufacturer that has heads that have a flat attachment point. But maybe you can't see it, but it's very subtle. But what you're going to do is just slice off just a little piece of the bottom of it so it's not quite as rounded on the bottom. And that little piece of plastic removed, you can see here, this had like a very rounded ball joint neck attachment point. Same thing with this guy. But you can see that it makes for a much more flush attachment of the neck to the torso. Anyway, food for thought on that. And then I went into Conversion Town here. So this is a body from their Mercenaries box. So all Stargrave set, just like Frostgrave, just like Oathmark, all of the arms and heads I think are totally interchangeable, and they're designed to be totally interchangeable from a scale standpoint. So this is arms and a head from the Scavengers box with a body from the Mercenaries box. Likewise here, this is from the Automatons set that we just took a look at last week. So body from the Automatons, the head and the arms are from the Scavengers set, which I think looks great. Let's look at, this is actually a Frostgrave body from their Cultists 2 set. I noticed, I'm sure there were people shouting at the screen, that there were 2 sets of arms that I didn't recognize right away that are actually like these zombie arms is kind of what it looks like. Like they got the space or the desert madness, and there were 2 heads that kind of accompanied that too. So I made kind of a zombie figure here with a body from the Cultists 2 set from North Star, and then again a head and arms from this set here. And then I'd also mention that I think the scale is pretty much identical to Wargames Atlantic figures for those that are interested in doing that. And I think this kind of confirms it. So again, these are arms, and the accessory, the backpack, are from the Scavengers box. The body is actually from the Wargames Atlantic Guards set, and the head is from one of their conversion sets. But again, this is mostly just to show proportion scale here. So I think that it all looks really fantastic. So let's start on the Lazy Susan here. Let's see how they scale up with different manufacturers. All right, here we go. So I've got a bunch of different manufacturers spinning around here. Anything that's primed white will have the name of a manufacturer or a range listed on the front of the base there. And then the 5 miniatures that are just bare plastic are, of course, from this Scavengers box. So what's the final verdict? This is great. Again, anything in the last few years from North Star, from a Christmas standpoint, from a sculpting standpoint, design standpoint, has been really tight, really fantastic. If you've only dealt with North Star Plastics from right when Frostgrave came out, really you should check out some of their newer stuff, because it is so far beyond what they were doing in their early days. And that's true of basically every manufacturer I've dealt with, by the way. Like early Victrix stuff versus new Victrix stuff is like night and day. So treat North Star the same way, where they really do learn with every kit that they put out, and this is no exception here. So this set, not only is it great from a detail standpoint, but there's so much on here that I would challenge anyone to tell me that they can't find something useful about this set. If you play any sci-fi game, any dystopian RPG games, anything like that, there's going to be something in here for you. Again, not just if you're a Stargrave player. There's so much usefulness, so much versatility within this set for use across a whole host of different game systems and hobby projects. So, and the price is right. That's another thing you really got to keep in mind with anything from North Star. We're talking about like $30 for a set of miniatures. You do the math. You can contrast that with some Games Workshop alternatives, for example. So check them out. Links down in the description to their web store if this is something you'd like to look at. Once again, huge thanks to North Star for sending this our way. Another home run with this set. Looking forward to seeing what else comes out in the Stargrave range. I mentioned I have 2 more sets that we're going to be doing here in short order, so stay tuned for those. As ever, I appreciate you dropping by for this one in the meantime. And until next time, happy gaming.